Hey, it's Jamie Scrimger. When I became a stepmom, I quickly realized that while moms are encouraged to keep it real, there's a big double standard when it comes to stepmoms. So I decided to start the conversation myself. Thriving as a stepmom doesn't just come from conversations about being a stepmom, though. Here we dive into marriage, relationships, personal growth, and more. My mission? Inspire you to live a kick-ass life while bringing you along as I create my own. This is the KICK-ASS Stepmom Podcast. Hello. Welcome to the KICK-ASS Stepmom Podcast. Jamie here. Well, of course, I'm the host. Don't know why I said that. Anyway, today's episode is with divorce coach and author Kate Anthony. Kate is a firecracker, and I just love her so much. You may remember her from a previous episode, and she's also made an appearance or two inside the KICK-ASS Stepmom community. You know, this was such a candid conversation about, well, a lot of things, but mostly women's frustrations in marriage. We dive into the mental load of the mom and the stepmom, the number one cause that Kate sees in her work for divorce, with like why women are leaving. And I was surprised by the reason. She said it was emotional abuse, which was super interesting to me. Then we also talked about what emotional abuse really is and how actually something we don't fully understand. We don't realize how common it is. Anyway, we also dive into the power of having set responsibilities between partners in the home, which is something I'm really big on. And then we start talking about stepmom, mom stuff, like how sometimes there are some stepmoms that are offside and who do overstep. And then there are sometimes some ex-wives who are a complete nightmare. So normally we're pretty positive on that front, but it's interesting because Kate and I deal with different sides of this. So she's often working with the ex-wives and those who have left the marriage, and I am supporting the stepmoms. So we definitely bring different perspectives to the conversation, but it's always a good one. There is definitely something in this episode for everyone. So have a listen, and I would love to know what resonates with you. So if something hits, come on over to Instagram, shoot me a message, and let me know what hit. All right, let's dive in. Well, Kate, I think the first place I want to start is something that you said on your Instagram. I think it was a little while ago, but you were talking about how the institution of marriage is set up to serve and benefit men.
Well, there was a study done years ago. I mean, not too many years ago. I don't know. That rated the happiness of heterosexual people in heterosexual marriages. The happiest group were married men. The second happiest group were single women, then single men, and the least happy were married women. So you've got married men are the most happy and married women are the least happy.
Wow.
And these are people who are married to each other, right? You know, essentially what it says is that we are carrying way too much of the burden of emotional labor, of all of the domestic labor. You know, you and I are in this personal development industry, and we both focus on women. And there are not a lot, you know, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of questions from men saying like, well, who's the you for me? You know, essentially, who's doing what you do for men? And, you know, there aren't a lot, because at the end of the day, about 75% of personal development and therapy, you know, this includes therapy, coaching, podcast consumption, it is consumed by women. And we're doing all of this work. You know, who reads the parenting books? Like we do. Then we're translating, then we're saying like, hey, I learned this thing. And a lot often, not always, guys, not all men, not all the time, but very often, I know in my marriage, right? Like I read all the books and I did all the work of the parenting books and I read all the relationship books and everything like that. And then my husband would come in and be like, well, I disagree. And I'd be like, wait, what? Based on what? Like, here's here's the stack of books I read to come to my opinion. What are you talking about? So listen, this is not actually to rag on men or denigrate men in any way, shape, or form, because at the end of the day, men are at risk of much higher rates of suicide, much higher rates of stress-related diseases, earlier death rates, right? Because this doesn't serve them to not do the work, right? And 69% of divorces are initiated by women. And so they're, quote, happy, right? They're satisfied, but they're actually not happy. And take away the labor that we're doing, take away our emotional support, take away us being their therapist because they're not seeking it from an actual therapist. And these men fall apart by and large.
Do you think that has to do with the fact that like they still, I think, have this pressure to be tough,
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
right? And they view things like therapy and personal development and all the things that look, I probably shouldn't even say this on the podcast, but I have been saying to my husband, I said, I want to go to therapy so bad. I really want to go to therapy. And he's like, why? I said, I don't know. I just think it would be good for us. And not that there's a problem to solve, but I truly believe that everyone benefits from therapy. Like, I think everyone should be in therapy. It's just such a useful tool. And it's been so great for me. Person who's like, well, what's wrong? Right. And I feel like they almost see it like there's a problem that needs to be fixed.
100%. 100%. And here's the deal. I will tell you that, most of the women that I work with as a divorce coach, as someone who helps women make the decision whether to stay or go, have been begging their husbands to go to therapy with them for a long time. And their husbands have said no, and usually because there is a problem, right? But a lot of the problems, the quote problems in marriages that women want to go to therapy to fix are problems that the husbands don't really feel are a problem because it serves them, right? So, what I say is if the marriage isn't working for one person, it's not working, period. And so if your spouse says, hey, something doesn't feel like it's working for me, would you go to therapy with me? Because I feel like we're not getting anywhere in our own conversations about this. And your husband says, like, sounds like a you problem. Everything's fine with me, right? That's a problem. That's the problem, that your needs aren't being heard, that he doesn't really seem to care about something that is bothering you.
Yeah, for sure.
The response should always be, oh shit, what do we have to do?
Or even if they don't agree, I don't see it that way, but I'm sorry that that's how you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not going to always see things in the same way and from the same perspective, or even, we'll have conversations, Darren and I, and I'll say, when you said that to me like that, it feels like this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, that's not what it was. I said, well, that's what it felt like. So it actually is what it was because I'm the person you're talking to and you're communicating with me. So we've had to have a lot of those conversations because I will do the same to him, right? I was like, well, that's not true. He's like, no, but it is for me, right? Understanding that you can both have two very different truths.
Well, and this comes down to impact trumps intent. I understand that wasn't what you intended, but the impact it had on me was this, right? And we have to be responsible for our own, it's like, yeah, I have a trigger around that. Like I have a childhood wound, because when my mother would talk to me like that, it really did mean that. And I understand that's my stuff and that's why I'm in therapy and I'm working on that. And in a healthy relationship, we don't dismiss each other's triggers, right? We say, oh yeah, right, you have a trigger around that. I'm really sorry. I want to work on that to help you because I don't want you to feel like you did when you were a child.
Mm-hmm. I like that. In a healthy relationship, we don't dismiss each other's triggers. So good.
Right? Like we hold them.
I'm a huge lover of Element. It is my go-to electrolyte drink and a longtime sponsor of the podcast. So yes, Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means lots of salt and no sugar, no artificial ingredients, no coloring, no BS.
It is formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited if you're following a keto, a low carb, or a paleo diet. I just did the metabolic reset, which I've shared about on the podcast, and it was totally okay on that as well. Basically, if you're a professional athlete or you're just an everyday mom, it is for you. Element is a huge part of my day to day, whether it be rehydrating during workouts, when I'm traveling, after maybe a little too much wine, in my cocktails and my mocktails. Like, I am always popping the Element salt into my drinks. 100 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium. I have one every day. Seriously though, about the cocktails, throw in some lime Element salt with soda, tequila, lime, and mint. It is so delicious. So staying hydrated is a crucial and huge priority of mine. And proper hydration isn't just about drinking water. It means having adequate water and salt. And big news, Element just introduced Element Sparkling. So again, no sugar, there's no caffeine in this, all electrolytes. Element Sparkling delivers the same zero sugar electrolyte formulation that I have been telling you guys about, now in a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling water. I couldn't have got better news. This is so exciting. I am such a fan of Element. Already put it in my soda water. So this is just, wow, this just made my life so much easier. Element Sparkling offers health seekers an all-new option to support their health across the board spectrum of occasions. So with each can, you're taking a sip against sugar and stimulant-loaded drinks, and you're turning the tide towards health. I am so pumped for this. To grab some Element, head to www.drinklmnt.com/KICK-ASS Stepmom and get a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. That's just the drink mix purchase. I love these free sample packs because it just gives you a chance to try all the flavors and decide which one is your fave. Mine is watermelon. Darren loves lime. Head to www.drinklmnt.com/KICK-ASS Stepmom to get a free sample pack with a purchase of a drink mix and keep your eye out for the new Element Sparkling. Seriously, cannot wait.
For a while there, Darren and I were out of sync. From our calendars to communication to what was going on in each other's lives, there was just so much going on that date night and connecting with each other fell off the list. And when we did have one-on-one time, Reese was with us. Surprise, surprise. It was just such a challenging time. And I know that you guys know when your relationship isn't solid, the extra stressors that come with step-family life don't always feel worth it. So keeping your relationship on track is very important. Insert Koupla. So Koupla is a relationship app created for couples by a couple. It has helped thousands of couples connect using a shared calendar, to-dos, and reminders to spend more quality time together and connect on a deeper level. The calendar feature allows couples to easily manage each other's work and home schedules while also incorporating various family calendars into one convenient location. The calendar allows couples to prioritize date nights and quality time with each other and navigate through calendar conflicts and scheduling challenges that arise from juggling work, kids, exes, and more. Now, one of the big challenges that stepmoms have is that they aren't always in the loop about schedule changes with the kids. I don't know about you, but this used to drive me crazy. Koupla can help with this. When your partner adds a new schedule to the calendar, you will automatically be in the loop. You can also keep date nights on track with the date planner. As we all know, a regular dedicated time with your partner is one of the best things you can do for your relationship. But with work and friends and children and all the things demanding your attention, it can be hard to carve out that time to be together. So you can plan dates easily, get reminded about your upcoming dates, and keep your date nights on track. Koupla also has the only task manager and to-do list specifically designed for couples. Beyond simply managing groceries, couples utilize these lists to organize everything from planning their next vacation to managing a home renovation to curating exciting date nights ideas and keeping track of gift ideas. Koupla is offering a 50% discount off an annual subscription for my listeners for the first year. All you have to do is enter Jamie when you check out. You can get the link via my show notes, or you can also download Koupla from the App Store. And after onboarding on the subscription page, you can click Redeem Offer and enter the code Jamie to get your discount. So what would you say is the biggest issue for, like, what's the biggest cause of divorce right now in your work? Like, what are you hearing from women?
I hate to say this because it's really, really, really awful, but emotional abuse is the top thing that I hear.
Wow.
And I didn't set out to be an expert in domestic violence. I didn't set out to have to do this to become a victims, a certified domestic violence victims advocate. But it was so present in my work so much that I actually had to get certified. I had to be responsible for the lives that I was sort of holding in this. And yeah, it's a bummer, man. It's power and control, like the basis of all domestic violence. And I'm not talking just physical violence, I'm talking emotional abuse. I am talking about coercive control, right? The underpinning of all of that is about power and control. And I think that men have been socialized in Western culture to feel that relationships are about power and control. I could sort of opine about the origins of that, but it doesn't really matter. Like where we're at right now is that a lot of women are fed up with power and control over their emotions, their bodies, right? And like, I feel like the more this is playing out in politics, certainly in the US, it's so dark. When we see those dynamics playing out in our own homes, we're like, absolutely not. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to the ballot box and voting against this while experiencing it in my home. And we have overwhelmingly gotten to a place where we don't need their income. They're not doing the emotional labor. They're not necessarily bringing in more money than we are. And so a lot of us are sort of left wondering, well, what am I actually getting? What is the benefit?
Yeah. Tell me more about the emotional abuse. Like, what does that look like? I think a lot of people don't fully even understand what emotional abuse is.
I think you're right. People come to me all the time and they're like, well, he says this to me, he says that to me. And I'm like, yeah, that's abuse. And it's shocking, It's like it doesn't feel right because it's not. So the thing about emotional abuse, like I want to look at like not just, what does it look like, right? But what does it feel like? Do you feel you're never right? Right? You're always the one who's wrong, and you're always the one who has to change, and you're always the one who has to apologize, and you're always the one you're bending yourself into pretzels trying to be what this other person says you should be, because then everything will be okay. And then you twist yourself in this direction and it's still not quite right. And then you twist yourself in that direction and it's still not quite right. And then you do, but there's still something wrong with you, right? So it's a constant criticism. It's feeling like you should be a robot that is programmed, that he can like control with an app, kind of, right? I used to say that to my husband all the time. I was like, I feel like you want me to be a robot that you program and that you don't actually see or care about me as a person. And of course, he would deny that. I mean, one of the problems about identifying emotional abuse is that when you look it up, even on some of the more well known and platforms that are doing incredible work, the examples are so overt. And at the end of the day, most emotional abusers aren't that overt. They're not that dumb, right? When you look it up, the examples are like, he tells you that you're nothing without him, or you're like worthless, and it's like, most people just don't talk to people like that.
It's more like passive aggressive, like underlying, like.
Yes, it's more covert, it's more passive aggressive, which is why it's hard to say like what it looks like, but it's really what it feels like. You feel like you can never do anything right. You feel like you don't know who's going to walk in the door. Very often you feel brain fog and confusion because the stress hormones, if you're constantly stressed, you feel this sense of constant dis-ease. You don't feel safe. You don't feel emotionally safe.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the word safe more. And I think we need to think about it in not just a physical sense. Like I feel physically safe, right? Like no one's going to attack me or whatever. Like feeling truly safe and calm and at peace in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have been doing just a little bit of work in terms of like, how do I want to feel in my day? How do I want to feel in my business? How do I want to feel in my home, in my life? And safe, peace, and calm are the three words that just keep coming back to me. And it's actually really interesting because I do have that in so many areas. And then, life happens and you like derailed and you kind of have to bring back to that space. But I don't think as women, we strive for that feeling enough. Like even just to like calm our nervous system, regulate ourselves, like feel safe. I don't know. Have you seen that? It's a reel on Instagram. It's probably trending now, and like everyone and their mom is doing the same thing. But it's just a vision of like a woman goes and she like lays with her husband and just saying how like she can literally feel her system being calm when she gets into his arms. There's like several of them going around. And like that's what your relationship should feel like.
Yes,
Like it should feel like home.
that's exactly right. And so many women don't feel that. The idea of that, honestly, like in my relationship, if I think back to my marriage, like the idea that being in my husband's arms could feel safe, it's like, it's a joke.
Yeah. I will say Darren bugs me.
Sure.
Darren bugs me. I always say to him, yeah, I'm like, you bug me so much. You are driving me crazy. I'm like, but I don't want to wake up with anyone else and you feel like home.
That's right.
And I feel like that should be your baseline.
When I ask my clients, yes, it should be. I ask my clients a really revealing question sometimes when they're like, I just don't know if I should, stay or go. And and I'll say, is this the person like when the kids are gone, when the kids are grown and it's just the two of you, is this the person you want to walk off into the sunset with? And their responses can be very intense. Like, oh God, no. Oh Jesus, no. And I'm like, okay, then what are you doing? You know? So I actually have, and I'll send it for your listeners if you want. I have a healthy relationship checklist, and it's like an assessment, right? And some of the questions are like, I feel emotionally safe in my relationship, right? Yes or no? I'm able to freely express myself and my opinions are heard and honored. I feel physically safe, obviously. I feel completely free to be myself around my partner. I never felt that. In fact, when you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, not only are you not free to be yourself, you lose sight of who you are because you spend so much time trying to be the person that they keep telling you that you should be in order to make the relationship work, that you end up, you have no idea who you are anymore because you're bending yourself into these pretzels. You're able to express your concerns about the relationship. You're able to say, like, hey, there's something that's kind of bugging me. Can we talk? And it's like, oh, again, like it's not working for you. It's not working. Let's talk about this. Right. I mean, I think I have 25 questions, but that's the sort of your relationships with your friends and family are supported and encouraged. One of the top tactics of abusers is isolation from your friends and family. You should have bodily autonomy in your relationship. You should never, ever have sex you don't want to have. You should never be coerced in any way into having sex. It should be something that both partners are enthusiastic about or it doesn't happen.
Or at least willing.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
Like I'm not always enthusiastic, but like,
Well, sure, sure. But you're saying yes because you're choosing to say yes, as opposed to he's telling you that, well, you're feeling disconnected in the relationship. The only way I can feel connected is if we're having sex.
Yeah.
That's coercion.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting too, right? Because I've had a lot of sex experts on the podcast and they talk about how, for women, you need to feel loved and supported and connected, like emotionally, to feel like you want to have sex with your partner. And then men need that physical connection. And then that kind of cycles into more of that emotional connect. Like it's really this, like, so different, right? Like the one thing that one of the experts say, we were talking about this about when you just like don't want to have sex. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I feel like this is good.
That's okay. Go for it. Yeah.
When you don't want to have sex and like how to try to get that spark back. And she was saying how like, when you're with your friends or you're with like someone and they're like, are you hungry? And you're like, no, like, I'm not really hungry. So it's like, do you want to have sex? It's like, no, like, I really don't want to have sex. But you want to kind of get to the place where you're like, well, like, I could eat. Like, maybe I could eat. Right. And then you're like, oh, okay. So it's like touching of the hand and a little bit more like connection and intimacy. Then, you get to Eastside Mario's, you get to the Olive Garden or whatever you're going, you're like, oh, yeah, like, I could eat. Like, I'm here. I'm doing this.
That's right. I love that.
We're not just like walking around like wanting to have sex all the time. Like, I know I'm not. Well, women aren't, men are. Like, they can bone you anywhere. And I just like have to be in that mindset to get to that space. But it's just interesting.
And they need to understand that foreplay isn't just physical. Foreplay starts in the morning. You want to get laid tonight? And by the way, FYI, studies have shown there was a big scientific study done that showed that men who participate in domestic labor equally have more sex because their wives are not exhausted and they feel loved and respected and supported. So doing the dishes is an act of foreplay without being asked.
Oh, 100%. I wrote an article for Scary Mommy, like right when I first started my blog.
Yeah.
And it went viral. And it was like talking about how like, oh, like what turns me on. And it was like all of the list of things that actually turn you on. And it's like doing the dishes and things like that. I'd love to talk about the emotional labor and just like all the labor, the load on the woman. I read something once was, women are talking all about how like we've come so far and, we're getting ahead in the workplace, making more than ever, like all of these things. And this person was saying it's actually like from a feminist perspective, it's kind of, we've taken a step back in a lot of ways because now we've just added more to our plate.
That's right.
We're at this point where we're doing all of the things, feeling like we need to keep up with work and childcare and being a good wife. We have so much on our plate that it's like, is that better? Like, because, you're out working your 40-hour work week and then you're coming home and you're doing most of the stuff anyway. Like, how you doing? None of us are doing that great.
We're not doing great. Yeah, it's called the second shift. And it's a really real thing, right? Because it's the second shift. So the 40-hour work week was predicated on a man going to work who has a wife at home doing all the domestic labor. And then we moved into the workforce and we started working, but we were still doing all the domestic labor. It was still our job to cook and clean and do the laundry and get the kids to school and like all of that. And so now we have a second job. So now we have two jobs. And the men are still coming home. To this day, men have, I think it's an additional 3 hours of leisure every week on top of what we do. Because they come home and we've been working all day too, right? We all get home and he has to poop for an hour.
Yeah. What is that?
What is that? Well, it's escape.
It's disgusting.
Like if you have to poop for an hour, you have a problem and you should go have a colonoscopy and figure out what's wrong with you.
100%. Because, there are times in my day where I have to take a shit.
Yeah.
And I either have to pinch it because I have stuff I need to do.
Right.
Or go in and do like a half-ass job and just finish it up later.
Quickie. That's right.
A quickie. Like, tell me why you are sitting on the shitter for 30 minutes.
And also like, ew.
It's disgusting.
Like, I don't want to sit in the room with my shit for an hour. Like, that's just gross. Like, get in, get it done, and get out.
Yeah.
But they're not pooping in there. They're on their phone.
They're on the Pornhub.
They're on Pornhub, right? While you are doing the dishes and getting the kids ready and cooking dinner, right? And it would never occur to most women to come home and be like, I just need like 30 minutes to relax, right? And men are down on their game rooms, on their Xboxes, and it's like spend the weekend, right? It's like they get up in the morning and they're on Saturday morning and they're like, well, I have to go play golf. And it's like, we got kids and like, you have to play golf?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And, I think that's loaded too, because there's an element, I think, of us as women that we're a little jealous of them and their ability to do that, right?
100%.
But not even their ability to do that.
The audacity.
But like, hear me out on this, like their ability to mentally do that.
Because I know my husband, I will say, and I do think sometimes we forget the things that men do too. Like we can get so caught up in our emotional load and all the things that we have that I think there are things and there are men who on the flip side do feel very unseen in that respect. And I can say that because my husband has said that to me. He's like, you focus on the things that I'm not doing. He's like, what about all of the things I am doing? Right? Like, I feel like you just, anything I'm not doing, you're pointing out or you need me to do. Like, he was calling me a nag. And I totally was being a nag in that moment. And I think it's true, right? Because I do think behind the scenes, there are those unseen things that they're taking care of that we don't see. But maybe there's not the competition. Like, I don't know, the filter.
Like what?
The filter in the air.
Listen, I hear what he's saying.
We're 75% for sure.
And, right, there have actually been studies. There have been Pew Research studies. And this was, by the way, in 2015, before the pandemic, there was a Pew Research study that took couples that were, happily married and in which the men said that they do 50%. Like, these are feminist men. These are men who really believe that they're doing half of the labor. And they studied what they're doing each week. And they found that the women are still doing 80%.
Mm-hmm.
In the relationships where men still think that they're doing 50% because they don't know all that we do. This is the invisible labor that we do. This is that I know, oh, the kids have a science project due on Friday. That means by Monday, I need to get poster board. I need to make sure that we have all of the stuff right. And I'm thinking 6 steps ahead. That's the thinking that we do that they're not taking on and they rely on us for. And it's not because we're better multitaskers. It's because we have more neural pathways built because we've had to. So then the pandemic happened. So it was like 80-20 in the best case scenarios. And then the pandemic happened and over 5 million women in the US were out of the workforce because I don't know about you, Jamie, but when we were in lockdown, in the moms groups that I'm a part of, just our local moms groups, like not even my Facebook group, just like the local groups, there were women who were like, so we both had meetings and he just went into the bedroom and closed his door. Like my meeting didn't matter. And so I guess I also have to like homeschool our, like he didn't even say like, hey, we've got our kindergartner on Zoom in Zoom school. We both have meetings. No, he just went and closed the door. And this happened so often that women were leaving the workforce in droves because
they couldn't do it.
They couldn't do it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not discounting that we do way more.
Way more.
I wonder, though, just like this is just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like men are very sensitive and they like to feel seen and they need a little bit of an ego boost. So when you're telling them things that they do well, then they're more likely to help out. Like when I'm nagging my husband about tons of things, he's more likely to be like, screw off and like go just like downstairs and like watch a show. But if I'm like, hey, thank you so much for doing that. That was really helpful or whatever. Can you also do this? And it's true. Like we're at this, like, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I 100% agree with it. I just thought it was an interesting perspective to share kind of what he had said. The mental load of the mom and stepmom is wild. If you know, you know. From work to finances to kids to co-parenting to managing schedules to self-care. I feel like if I'm not actively trying to manage my stress, well, it manages me. Especially during this season of my life, stress management is a huge focus and a priority of mine. So from having alone time in the morning to journaling to regularly working out, eating healthy, I'm always trying to do what I can for my body and my mind to show up as my best. And something that I have recently added to my routine is starting my morning with Rituals Stress Relief. So this product uses first of its kind technology to support the body's natural cortisol response so that you can take on the daily juggle. Rituals Stress Relief BioSeries technology is designed to optimize the release of a trio of clinically studied ingredients to help the body manage stress. Clinically studied to support normal cortisol levels and reduce stress and provide quick stress relief within the hour, It's this non-drowsy sense of calm. Again, clinically studied to promote positive mood and reduce stress. All of that sounds amazing. Am I right? So, Ritual suggests taking stress relief in the morning when cortisol is typically at its peak to support the body's natural cortisol response. The best thing about Ritual supplements is that they have an instant and an extended release formulation for all day support, up to 8 hours. I'm also a big fan of Ritual's multivitamin for women, which is designed to help fill all of the nutritional gaps in our diet. Ritual also has daily protein, symbiotic and gut health, sleep and bioseries melatonin, among others, to support you in showing up as your best. The struggle is real. Don't just respond to stress. Get ahead of it with stress release from Ritual. Get 25% off your first month at www.ritual.com/stepmom. Start Ritual today or add stress relief to your subscription today. That's www.ritual.com/stepmom for 25% off. www.ritual.com/stepmom for 25% off.
Do you think having more defined roles in the home would be more beneficial as opposed to, we're all doing the dishes, we're all doing the laundry, we're all doing because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We have very defined roles in our home, like very defined.
Yeah. And I think that's right. Listen, that's why, Eve Rodsky wrote Fair Play, because you essentially list out every single job in the home, and then you choose what you are going to take 100% ownership of, and she created a card game for it. I think it's a great tool. There's, some blowback, like, do we really need a card game to list out? Like, I don't need to list out all the things that need to get done in the house. Weird that you do, but okay. But if that's where we're at, right? And look, I do think there is something to, like, I am not a fan of, stroking fragile egos, because I think it does perpetuate an issue. And in a healthy relationship, that's just how you talk to each other. You want to have, impact trumps intent. So if you want a positive outcome, like, yeah, you speak kindly and respectfully to your spouse and say, like, hey, I really appreciate all that you're doing.
I need you to do 100 times more.
100 times. I need you to do 8,000 more things. But I do think the idea of having very clearly delineated jobs that each person is 100% responsible for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
If laundry is my job, like, that is my domain, and nobody gets to criticize how I do it. By the way, laundry is not my domain. I hate laundry. But as a single woman, I don't have a choice. It's all me. But you don't get to criticize how the other person does the job that they've taken on. And that's where women really need, we need to back off. If we want them to do the other, take on some responsibility, stop criticizing the way they're doing it.
100%. Actually, I had an interesting conversation with my sister the other day. She was annoyed at how her husband I hope he doesn't listen to this. Her husband I think it was unpacking something from the kids' bags after school or something. He had unpacked their bags, and she was just kind of like, what the fuck? He just did this. And then how can you mess that up? He basically did it wrong. Right. And she was just venting to me in a sister conversation. It was really funny, actually.
Sure.
But I said to her, I think it's just so interesting to me because I would never, ever expect Darren to unpack Reese's bag. And she says, why? He's 100% capable of contributing to that. And if he sees the bag that needs to be unpacked. And I said, it's just not on his list. It's not on his list of things to do. I would never do garbage, recycling, air filter, insurance, naming off all of the things, because I would essentially do it probably in a way that he doesn't think is right. And there was just part of me there. I was like, well, what if that was just your job? She's like, I don't want it to just be my job. It needs to be both of us, which I get that mentality too. But that's what I love about the 100% responsibility. Now, when I go away, does Darren have to step up and do that? 100%. But I think it's you think about running a family and a marriage. I think we've taken the business. It's like running a business too, when you're running a home, right? You don't have two. Well, I don't want to say CEO because then there's a power indifference, but you get what I mean? Two people doing the same roles.
That's right. I think you're right. And also, like, if you are sharing responsibility, like, it doesn't matter. Like you said, like, you either get to be the only person who does that job, or you zip it when they do it, right? You don't get to criticize how they're doing it. You know, he unpacked everything and left it, on the counter for me to then deal with. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever, if it's like unsanitary, like, okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I just think it's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of power when you're in a relationship, when you're in a marriage, to step back and be like, okay, how can we run things better? Right? How can we divide and conquer? Where are your strengths? Where are my strengths? Here's where I need help. I need you to step up and do more of that. I do think with that invisible load that women have,
Yeah.
and men just don't think like us. My neighbor said to me once, she said, men and women, their brains are different. She's like, think about it this way. And this is interesting. She goes, a woman's brain is like a bowl of spaghetti, lots of stuff. Like we're multitasking, we're going through like all of the things at once. And then she said, and a man's brain is like waffles,
Everything's in a grid.
right? Like almost like you're filling up one grid of syrup at a time. She's like, their multitasking ability is just different than ours. I'm not like getting men off the hook by any means, but I do think expecting them to see things and do things the exact same way as we do.
Yeah. But, they don't have to see things the same way we do in order to participate equally.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And I think this is in a healthy relationship, we're going to sit down and we're going to, like you said, like it's got to be intentional. So in a healthy relationship, we're going to sit down and we're going to like, okay, guys, I'm feeling overwhelmed. So we're going to sit down and we're going to have an intentional conversation because again, I have a problem, therefore we have a problem. So then it's not therefore you have to fix it and you're the problem. It's not a blame game, right? There's an issue in the relationship. We need to sit down together as a team to solve this issue. That's it. There's no blame.
I love that.
Right? This is not like normally what happens when, there's a problem in a relationship is that two people are like fighting over the problem.
Over who's right, who's wrong.
Right. And it's like someone's defensive, someone's accusing, right? And we're tugging at this problem, going back and forth. It's not working. But if we both go like standing shoulder to shoulder, looking at the problem in front of us and saying, okay, we're a team. We have this problem. How can we as a team work together to solve this?
Yeah, you're not in competition, right? Like you're on the same team.
That's right.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful too. A lot of stepmoms will come in and almost like we're trying to prove our worth, right? We start doing all the things for everyone, just like, a lot of women do this.
It's our relationship currency. We use it as relationship currency.
100%. Right. And so they go all in, they're doing all the things, they're taking over communication, they're doing the co-parenting thing, they're the groceries, the laundry, all the thing. Then all of a sudden, they're about 2 years in and they realize that, well, parenting is a thankless job. Step parenting is really freaking thankless. And they're burnt out. They're resentful. They're feeling overwhelmed. And they're like, why is everything on me? And then you have these partners who are like, well, I stopped doing these things because you told me you wanted to do them. You told me that you had it, like all of these things. So I see where their partners or their husbands are like, well, wait, you said you wanted to do these things. And then they're like, no, I don't. Right. So they want to change it. And I think there's so much power in a relationship in being like, hey, I went in, I did all of these things. I showed up in this way. I thought this was going to work in this capacity. This is no longer working for me. We need to go back to the drawing board.
That's right.
And like looking at marriage in that way and being like, okay, it's a constant. Is this working? What needs to be tweaked? How can I support you this week? Here's how you can support me. Like all of things like that. Right. But it's so common for women to be like, I'm freaking tapped.
That's right. That's right. And I talk about this a lot that women use our domestic prowess, as it were, as our relationship currency. We go into their bachelor pad, whether it's as a stepmom or whoever you're dating, right? We go into their bachelor pad and we're like, I can fix this. Oh my God, this is crazy. Like, I'll do your laundry. No, we're going to organize your drawers this way, right? And we use this is relationship currency. We are now like, we play wife. And then they marry us and they're like, cool. Then we have real kids, right? And we're like, now you have to be my partner. Now we have to share the stuff that I've been doing all along because it was cute and fun. But now it's too much for me. But that feels like a bait and switch. And they're right. It is a bait and switch. And so we have to be responsible when we're dating, especially when we're dating men with children, of not coming in and swooping in and being like, domestic goddesses, because we will get too tired. It's like, it's fun to play house for a minute, but now you're locked into a forever game of house and they're going to feel betrayed.
And there's no parade.
Yeah. And, I see this all the time with, men who are remarrying with the stepmom, whatever, right? Is that they're coming in and they're like, men remarry so much more quickly. Usually women who get divorced, we're like, oh, right, that whole thing doesn't work.
They're not rushing into this.
Right. Men who get divorced tend to remarry really quickly because they lost their, like, not their ticket, but they lost their domestic labor, their help. And then you've got someone who comes in here and is like, I'm going to play house with you.
Well, I hope they love us too, because Darren remarried quickly.
No.
Joking. I'm just joking.
No, I'm sure he does. Right? Yes.
Yeah.
And again, be responsible for listen, it's really hard. I work with the women who are the ex-wives of the women that you work with.
Yeah. That's why I always love talking to you, because we don't always fully agree with everything.
Yeah.
But we can have the best conversation. Like, you can say something or I can say something. I'm like, I know she does not agree with that, but I love it because it's just such an interesting dialogue.
I don't feel like I disagree with you, but it's an interesting perspective, right? Because, well, actually what I see is a lot of women who are not working with you and need to be working with you because they're overstepping. And I'll have to say to my clients, I think she's coming from it from a good-hearted place, but she doesn't know what her place is.
Well, yeah. And I think a lot of stepmoms are coming in and they're trying to just find their role and trying to prove themselves almost and feel like they belong. But in doing so, they do really overstep. I was talking to a woman the other day and she was saying, my stepson came and he hasn't had a bath in 3-4 days. Or I don't know what she was saying, right? It was about hygiene, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure that wasn't the exact case, right? But she was going to text the ex and be like, we need to be concerned about, just kind of tell the ex, I was like, no, do not do that.
No, that's his job. You're not the co-parent.
I said, pop the baby in the bath and move on. I think a lot of times when women are overstepping as the stepmoms, and look, there's a lot of situations where maybe mom isn't showing up in the way she should be and vice versa.
Absolutely.
But I know anytime I really judged my husband's ex, and I did, there were tons of times when I really did. And I can look back on that from the space that I'm at now and know that it was from a place of insecurity, from a place of trying to prove myself. And it was almost wanted to be the best parent I could, but didn't realize that finding faults in someone else's parenting wasn't going to make me a better parent. And I think that's where a lot of stepmoms, does this make sense? Get kind of hijacked.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. And I actually want to have you on my show to talk about this because I think it's a really important conversation for the biological moms to hear that so often there really is their heart's in a good place. There's one client who's the stepmom. Every time she texts her ex about something with the kids, the stepmom responds. And she's created a group chat with the three of them. And the biological mom is like, I'm not co-parenting with you. What's happening here? I'm trying to have a conversation with my child's father. But literally every time she texts the dad, the stepmom takes over. And, she's talked to him about it and he obviously doesn't care. And that's a him problem, right? But that's the thing is that is a him problem. That's a problem that he needs to solve.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Let's dive into that. What makes the stepmom feel so triggered, so insecure, so fearful, so whatever about them corresponding about the kid?
So like, what is actually going on there? I know for me, there was a time where I'm like, can I get the hell out of these conversations? Like, this is super triggering for me.
Uh-huh.
And it's causing me anxiety, right? So it's really interesting in so many different perspectives. You hear there's situations where stepmom's like, biomom, all she wants to do is talk to me about this. And like, I don't want to be involved in any of this. And then you have the stepmom who's like, mom doesn't want to communicate with me and I need to be involved. I'm a parent too, like all of these things. And it's true, like, there's no legal obligation for mom to communicate with stepmom. If they can have that cordial relationship, I think that's the goal. I think that's great. But if you're not being respectful, then yeah, that could be a whole other podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many layers to it, and it's insecurities. And it's also like, sometimes the stepmom is really, angry at the bio mom because of shit that he's saying about her. It's like, there's so many complexities to it, right? Because you're dealing with divorce, first of all. And then you're dealing with a new person coming into the divorce, which is insanity. It's already a cesspool.
I know. On the flip side, too, I saw this reel yesterday on Instagram, and she was saying how there are moms who are bent determined to make their ex's life a living hell. Like they are set out on it. And like they have, her example was, she's like, we have child support. They had child support figured out. And then as soon as he had a new girlfriend, she's going back and she's going after more money and she's going after this and going after that, like almost like this revenge thing.
Mm.
And I think that happens too. And so I get really stuck, I think, in my content where stepmoms are like, okay, like you want empathy, you want me to be empathetic because I'm really big on that. So she's like making our life like a living hell. And then it goes on both sides. And then it's just, there's so many different situations. It's so complex.
Absolutely. And we could probably talk, it is a whole other podcast, but I think it is. It's so complex because some of it is figuring out like who's telling whom what, right? Like, is he bad mouthing the ex to the new partner? So the new partner is coming at the ex, the bio mom with like a, already preconceived, like, you're a bitch, like whatever. Is the bio mom actually like deliberately making the ex's life a living hell? And then this poor new person is like, just like thrown into that fire. This is why I don't date men who are recently divorced, by the way.
Yeah. It was a bit of a mess.
Partly because this is what I do for a living, right? So like I'm not here to be your divorce coach. I'm actually here to have a relationship with you, right? But yeah, cuz I don't want any part of that mess. I don't want any part of it.
Oh yeah. I say Darren and I don't know why we talk about this because like it's not the plan, but I'll say if we got divorced, I would not hook up with anyone with kids if there's any type of issue at all. Like period, end of story out. Even like adult kids, like I would be like not interested. I would want that man who never married and just like saved all his money and wants to go travel. That's what I would.
Yeah.
No bullshit, right?
I'm down for that too.
Yeah, like let's do that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much. Okay, you have your book. Tell us about your book. I'm so excited. I'm so proud of you.
Here's my book. Here's my book baby. I hate
your
it when people
baby.
call it a book baby, but like really. It's called The D Word, Making the Ultimate Decision About Your Marriage. And that's what it is. It is helping women decide whether to stay or go. It is very accessible. It is written from the perspective of someone who's been there, as I have, but who's also a professional. A lot of the feedback I've been getting is that it's very, as I am, no nonsense, straightforward, direct, but also really, really deeply compassionate. So I'm kind of telling you the hard truths in a really loving way. And I love that that's the feedback I've been getting because that was certainly the intention.
Yes, so good.
So it's available wherever books are sold. I just got a text from a friend that they saw it in the Barnes and Noble, wherever they are. So it's all in all the bookstores, and the audio book is now available, which is a really big deal because, this isn't necessarily the book that you want sitting on your coffee table or by the side of your bed. So for a little bit more safety, security, privacy, the audiobook is now available. So that's great.
Yeah, you're like sitting with your partner at the beach on your family vacation.
Yeah. With a fake cover on it, by the way.
Oh my gosh, you should do that.
We did.
You did?
We did. Yeah, I did.
Oh my God, I love it.
I did for the launch. We did like a fake book cover contest. It was really funny. So like,
so good.
submit a title of a book your husband would literally never open.
Love it. That's such a good
Yeah.
idea. Okay, amazing. We'll link everything for everyone. You were such a gem.
Thank
I always love
you.
talking to you. I'm sure we'll do this again. We always have good rips.
100%.
That's it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you could share it with someone in your life who you think could benefit from it. And if you haven't already left a rating and a review on iTunes, it really is the best way to support the show. And if you're craving more real talk and coaching and community, be sure to check out my membership, the KICK-ASS Stepmom community. Head to www.kickassstepmom.com to learn more.